Peace kings, peace queens. We're going to do chapter 1 of the Road from Orion by Judy K. King. Revision, the act of looking back, foreseeing with fresh eyes, of entering an old text from a new critical direction, is for us more than a chapter in cultural history. It is an act of survival. Until we can understand the assumptions in which we are drenched, we cannot know ourselves. When we did awaken, writing as Revision, Adrian Rich. Chapter 1. A starry black night is broken by a cold eye forever watching over the human sea of life. In relentless pursuit, the sun guards the hazy horizon like an island of fire heating the earth, although this is not its real intention. The glittering eye from the horizon knows about the death of fire and is angry because we steal its energy. We capture its fire to live, and that is why the crimson ring is a noose around our necks. Or better yet, a raw tattoo of smoldering iron carved in our hearts. If a watcher stares long enough at the unblinking hydrogen eye, he will understand as I do that it is a living organism out for revenge. Plagued by ideas such as these, my estranged state of mind forced me to question for the eternal death of the sun. Thoughts of this nature do not shape the destinies of the general rabble who question their existence, but such considerations have styled the lives of two individuals that I respect: a madman who despaired and a sadist who lived, crazed by the belief that the universe is a purposeless, monotonous machine cycling around and around like the earth about the sun. Certainly, the sadist's idea of a purposeless world is disturbing, but more disquieting is the madman's warning, which haunts my mind like a thief stealing the remains of my sanity. He said that when a person gazes too long into the abyss begins to gaze back. The horror hidden in this idea forced me to quit staring at the sun. Unlike the sadist, I could not believe that human existence had no purpose, and I doubt that Frederick, the madman, believed that this either, for he told me a story, a parable, about a shepherd who was sleeping when a black snake crawled into his mouth and bit him. The snake was lodged in the shepherd's throat, and Frederick had tried in vain to rip it out. Finally, my friend screamed to choking shepherd that he should bite the snake's head off. Desperate, the shepherd brought his jaws down hard on the snake, bit off its ugly head, and spat it out. Jumping up, laughing, he was no longer a shepherd, no longer human, but changed and radiant, which plunged Frederick into deeper despair and madness, because Frederick wanted the shepherd's transformation. He wanted to be the overman, a being beyond human, but he did not know how to make that change. Before going completely mad, he told me more about his overman, and I could see reason in his madness. Frederick explained his makeover idea by saying that a human being was like a rope, that with one end held by a beast and the other by the overman. If a person could walk the tightrope from the beast to the overman without falling, he would become the overman. The object, Frederick said, is not to let the jester pass you on the rope. When he first said jester, I imagined some fool balancing on the same rope and tipping me or tripping me. But Frederick explained that the rope stretched between two towers and that I would come out of a small tower door on the left, followed by an excited jester who would taunt me as I walked the rope. Frederick agreed that the erotic clown would be hard to beat because he was behind me, and from this vantage point, he could easily threaten me with abusive shouting that I was lame or slow and should be locked back up in my tower. Frederick then said that when I least expected it, the hyper freak would jump over me, throwing me off balance to crash to my death. The situation seemed irreversible, but I could not give up hope that there was a solution to outwit the jester. Is there any way I can trick the jester? I said cleverly, into coming out first so I won't fall off the rope. Visibly shaken by my remark, Frederick said, I have never been able to overcome the jester. All that I can do for you is to pick up your corpse after you fall. Looking at Frederick's heartbreaking eyes, I could see his despair, and I sensed the beginning of my own. The tragedy of always trying and forever failing or forever falling was disturbing, but an idea came to me. What if Frederick did not have all the information? Maybe he had overlooked some valuable piece of knowledge related to the jester, a mystery about the jester that, if known, would make it possible to walk the tightrope to the overman. It then occurred to me that only a fool would choose to walk the tightrope with the joker behind him. You have no choice, said Frederick. You are born to walk the rope and fall off. I insisted that there must be a solution, that he had overlooked something, but he had sadly shook his head no. That was my last memory of the madman, for he had a complete emotional breakdown. In 1889, Frederick witnessed a sadistic cab driver brutally whipping his carriage horse. Sobbing, Frederick ran to the suffering animal, throwing his arms around its bloody neck to protect the horse from the merciless whip of its master. Frederick collapsed completely and turned street next to the horse. Even though he underwent psychiatric treatment, he never recovered, dying almost 2 years later on October 25th, 10 days after his 56th birthday. I was still carrying the corpse of Frederick Nietzsche thought with me, still thinking of a way to outwit the jester, when I read the works of the Sadist, who was also missing valuable information. According to the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostic Manual of Mental Disorders, a sadistic is a person who inflicts physical or psychological suffering on another to achieve sexual excitement. The earliest age of onset is childhood, and 3 criteria determine this disorder. For the purpose of sexual excitement, if one repeatedly and intentionally abuses a non-consenting partner, or mildly or mortally abuses a consenting partner, then the person is a sexual sadist. The disorder can become reversed, or the disorder can become severe. For some sadists, rape, torture, and kill their victims. My friend Donatellian was a self-professed sadist who only abused consenting partners. Yet he was branded a demon, an alchemist, a Casanova, and a Bluebeard who cut up his wives. Born into aristocracy, he was naturally arrogant, coming from a family well known for their activities in civil church affairs. Although neglected by his parents, household servants indulged him, and by age 6, Donatellian was tortured by his uncle, a friend of Voltaire's. In time, Donatellian understood that nature was totally indifferent to the experiences in a man's life. It did not matter whether one was dead or alive, in prison or free. Donatellian understood this well, for he had spent 28 years of his life in prison for charges such as not paying debts, excessive behavior in a brothel, and for writing and publishing his stories. One wonders what was true about his life and what was contrived to prevent truth seekers from reading his writings. One story has it that when he was 32, he and his manservant Armand engaged 4 prostitutes to satisfy his flogging fantasies. Also enjoyed the episode until Donation offered the girls aniseed sweets laced with Spanish fly. This resulted in the girls becoming very sick and Donatellian on trial for poisoning and sodomy. Escaping to Italy with his wife's younger sister, whom he passed off as his wife, he was soon imprisoned by the king of Sardinia in a cell called the Great Hope after his mother-in-law requested the king to arrest him. Nonetheless, these reports of Donatellian's antics did not stop me from reading his writings. I consider him my mentor as I did Frederick, even though Donatellian sometimes acted like a cruel cab driver and tortured the horse, like Frederick's after his breakdown. Donatellian believed in nothing at all except perhaps for a good flogging to relax oneself. To me, he was a free spirit, a rebel against the absurd as Camus perceived him, a revolutionary force for a change in thinking. One day he told me that his storyline, modus operandi, of maiming, raping, and humiliating women for male pleasure was just a literary technique to emphasize a point. Wondering whether his misogyny method was that effective, I said, well, Donatellian, it better be a good point because posterity has labeled you as a sexual deviant. They have taken your name and made it a psychiatric disorder. The Marquise Donatellian de Sade laughed and motioned me forward as if to tell me a secret that would change my life. He said, in the real world, virtues serve no useful purpose. Even a woman uses her virtue as a mask to disguise her physical weakness, showing off her sexuality. The Marquise de Sade had little compassion for the weak or any guilt for the actions, and he believed sexual gratification was rooted in power over the weak, a power similar to nature's ability to forever rearrange indestructible molecules for its creation. Whether God is dead or alive did not matter to Donatellian. What mattered to him was the knowledge and vice. It's that knowledge and vice has its rewards. Emboldened, he continued, the idea of heaven having power over us was designed by hypocrites and charlatans to deceive and suppress the strong. I listened to him curiously, wondering if war, murder, and cruelty were really necessary. So I asked him, the purpose of these crimes of strength. War and murder release atoms for matter for nature to recycle, he said. It follows that mercy, charity, and virtue in general only help the weak to survive longer than necessary. Somewhat shocked, I sensed that he was telling me the truth because he didn't care whether I respected him or not. His libertine logic reminded me of the Irish poet Yeats, who professed that the best means of achieving freedom was through battle, rage, drunkenness, sex, and art. Like Frederick, who believed that man could be described as a herd animal, Donatien compared the virtuous weak to lambs among the ruthless wolves that nature favored. No wonder he aspired to be a wolf, for based on the limited truth he understood from experience, he had lost hope. The jester had beaten the Marquis de Sade. The idea that the tragic visions of Donatien and Frederick resulted from their being deprived of hope by the jester haunted me. The jester understood that being deprived of hope. The jester understood the gag. He knew how to get the snake out of the shepherd's throat. He knew how to stop the fall. If nature was unstoppable, ruthless, uncaring, and ruled by the urge to create and rearrange molecules, then it would seem that nature could also recognize a person into a being that did not root sexual gratification in power. To me, it seemed that the problem was the jester who was hiding the answer to some simple mystery that could restore the depth of hope. There had to be a way to force the jester to walk the tightrope first, tempting the stormy freak to reveal what he knew about the oncoming or about becoming the overman. Tortured by these ideas, my entire existence revolved around solving this riddle, especially since I met John Friedman. Irish by blood, impulsive by nature, this is as much a story about John and me as it is about the pursuit of truth. As for my identity, I remain anonymous due to the events that transpire, yet I can tell you that this story is about the power of the imagination to discover a new world, one that we can live in with hope, not despair. It is not about giving up the ordinary life for the sake of spiritual quest that discovers the unmasked the lost meaning of ancient Egyptian legacy.